Welcome to Craving the Heat, where desire takes the lead and every story leaves you wanting more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest naughty stories. I never thought I'd be the type of woman to betray her marriage. The very idea used to disgust me infidelity was a line, a deep red line, drawn far beyond what I believed myself capable of crossing. But life has a way of humbling you, and sometimes the road to betrayal isn't paved in lust or rebellion. Sometimes it's paved in loneliness, silence, and the simple desire to be seen. My name is Alina, and I've been married to Mark for almost 8 years. On paper, we looked like the perfect couple. Our wedding was straight out of a magazine. We had matching monogram towels, an Instagram-worthy kitchen, and a golden retriever named Luna. But perfection has a price, and for us, that price was truth. Mark and I stopped talking about the real things years ago. He threw himself into his job as a financial analyst, and I, once a painter, ended up teaching high school art. I was proud of what I did, but it felt like he barely noticed anymore. I became invisible in my own marriage. The sex stopped. The conversations turned into logistical check-ins. We were more like business partners managing a household than lovers sharing a life. And then there was James. James had just started teaching photography at my school. He was about my age, early 30s, with this effortlessly disheveled, charm-rolled-up sleeves, ink-stained fingers, and eyes that looked at you like he was reading between the lines. I noticed him, sure, but I never thought anything would come of it. At first, it was just friendly conversation in the break room, or quick chats about students and lesson plans, but something shifted the day I asked him to teach me Lightroom. I'd been dabbling in digital art, wanting to blend my traditional painting with some photography, and he was the go-to guy for anything tech-related. I approached him one afternoon after school. "James, would you mind showing me how to use Lightroom? Sometime? I'm completely lost with digital editing." He smiled in that easy, unguarded way of his. "Of course. How about after school tomorrow? We can use my classroom quiet and no one will interrupt." Looking back, maybe that was the moment, the invitation, the pivot. But at the time, it felt innocent. The first few sessions were just that educational. He was patient, hands guiding the mouse as he showed me how to adjust curves, lighting, contrast. But what caught me off guard wasn't how well he taught it, was how closely he listened. He asked about my art, my inspirations, my dreams. He remembered the little things, like the name of my first gallery showing or the color I was obsessed with in college. It was like someone turned the lights back on inside me. We began spending more time together, staying late, sharing stories. He told me about his divorce, how his wife left him for someone she met on a hiking trip. There was sadness in his voice, but no bitterness. I think he saw something familiar in me. That quiet ache of being left behind while still technically being with someone. One rainy evening, we were editing a photo of a broken window with vines curling through the cracks. It was beautiful, haunting. "This reminds me of you," he said softly. I laughed nervously. "A broken window?" "No," he smiled, the light still trying to come through. "Even though no one's looking for it anymore." My breath caught. I hadn't realized how close we were sitting until I could feel the heat of his arm against mine. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I should have left. I should have said thank you and walked away. But instead, I kissed him. It wasn't passionate. It was hesitant, trembling. A moment that was both too fast and too slow. But it happened. And once that line was crossed, everything changed. Over the next few weeks, our stolen moments became routine. The guilt was a constant companion. I'd drive home and sit in my car, unable to go inside, wondering who I was becoming. Mark didn't notice anything, or maybe he did and didn't care. He was always on conference calls, always too tired. He never touched me anymore, never asked where I was. I started lying. Telling Mark one had meetings. Telling myself that what I had with James wasn't an affair, it was something I needed. Something I deserved. But those lies only held up for so long. The truth came crashing down one night when Mark found a message on my phone. It wasn't explicit, just a photo James had sent me of a painting I'd made in college, with a caption, "You were born to create, don't forget that." But Mark isn't stupid. He connected the dots. There was no screaming, no throwing things. Just silence, a kind of silence that made my skin crawl. He asked one question. "Did you sleep with him?" I said yes. Mark left that night to stay at a friend's. He didn't say when he'd be back. I sat on the kitchen floor, crying, hating myself, hating what I'd done not just to him, but to us. To everything we built. James wanted to see me, to comfort me, but I told him I couldn't. I needed space. The truth is, I wasn't ready to face what we'd done or what it meant. He wasn't a villain. Neither was I. We were two lonely people who found each other in the cracks. Mark and I are in counseling now. We're trying. Some days are worse than others. He's trying to understand, and I'm trying to be honest. Even when it hurts, I lost a lot in this. I betrayed someone I loved, but I also woke up. I learned how dangerous it is to let silence grow roots in a relationship. I learned that neglect, even unintentional, can be just as disruptive as betrayal. And I learned that seeking validation from someone else, no matter how justified it feels in the moment, will never fix what's broken inside. I asked James to teach me Lightroom, but in the end, he taught me something far more painful: how easy it is to go too far when all you're looking for is to feel alive again. The mornings after everything came out were the worst. I'd wake up and for a split second, I'd forget. I'd think I was waking up into the same quiet, predictable life I always had. Then I'd roll over and see the empty space in the bed, the imprint where Mark used to sleep, and the weight of what I'd done would settle in my chest like wet cement. I started leaving the house early just to avoid seeing him. The silence between us had grown sharper, now no longer passive, but heavy with disappointment. Sometimes he'd come home for a change of clothes or to feed Luna, but he never stayed longer than necessary. He didn't slam doors or shout. He didn't cry. That almost made it worse. I kept wishing he'd yell, accuse, demand explanations. At least that would have given me something to respond to. But his quiet detachment left me alone with nothing but my own. Self-loathing. The school didn't feel like a sanctuary anymore either. Every hallway reminded me of James. Every classroom. Every click of the camera shutter during a student project brought him to mind. He kept his distance, thankfully. Maybe he understood that I needed space, or maybe he was just trying to protect himself from the fallout. A few weeks later, he texted me again. Just a simple line. "Are you okay?" I stared at it for a long time. My fingers hovered over the screen, wanting to type so many things. How I missed him. How I felt broken. How I didn't know what to do. But I deleted it all and replied with, "Not really, but I will be." We didn't talk after that. One night, Mark agreed to sit down with me. We were in the kitchen. I couldn't look at him, but I could feel him watching me. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. Why him? It wasn't a jealous question. It was a human one. I thought for a moment, then answered honestly. Because he listened. Because he looked at me like I still existed. Like I still mattered. And because I felt invisible in this house. He didn't flinch. He just nodded, slowly. "I didn't see it," he said. "I didn't see you disappearing." "I should have said something," I whispered. "So should I," he said. We didn't magically fix everything that night. We didn't fall into each other's arms or make some dramatic vow. We just sat there, finally acknowledging the quiet rot that had been growing between us for years. The betrayal was the final symptom, not the cause. We had both stopped fighting for each other long before James ever entered the picture. Therapy was Mark's idea. I was surprised, honestly. I thought he'd file for divorce and never look back. But something in him still wanted to understand. Or maybe he just needed to know if there was anything worth salvaging. We went together. At first, we barely spoke. But slowly, we started telling the truth. The counselor asked hard questions. Not just about the affair, but about our history, our silence, our pain. There were weeks when I left those sessions feeling like I had been flayed open, but strangely, it felt good. Honest pain was better than numbness. Marks started opening up. 2. About how overwhelmed he'd felt for years, how the pressure of providing had made him shut down emotionally, how he thought I'd stopped needing him. We'd both created stories in our heads about the other, and we had lived inside those lies until they became comfortable. There's no neat resolution here. We're still in the middle of it. Some days we hold hands on the couch while watching old movies. Other days we sleep on opposite sides of the bed and barely say a word. But there's effort now. There's presence. There's no more pretending. As for James, I still think about him, not in the same way. I don't fantasize anymore. But I wonder how he's doing, whether he found peace, whether he regrets any of it. I'm grateful for what he gave me, even if it came at a cost. He reminded me that I'm still a person, that I still have a voice, that I deserve to be seen not just as a wife or a teacher or a quiet fixture in the background, but as a whole, complicated, feeling human being. I wish I had found that without hurting the person I loved most. I wish I'd been braver earlier. I wish we had fought harder before it all fell apart, but now, at least, we're starting from the truth. And if there's anything worth rebuilding, it will be built on that. There were nights I'd wake up and reach for Mark, only to stop myself. Old habits die slowly. But even in the dark, there was always a space between us, not just physical, emotional too. The kind of gap you don't know how to cross because you're scared of what you might find on the other side. He never pulled away when I reached out, but he didn't reach back either. One morning, maybe 2 months after the night he found the message, he brewed coffee before I even got out of bed. It was such a small gesture, something he hadn't done in years, but it made my eyes sting. He didn't say much, just slid the mug toward me and kissed the top of my head before leaving for work. That kiss didn't undo what I'd done, but it said something. I'm still here. Little moments like that started piling up, slowly forming a fragile bridge back to each other. He'd help grade some of my students' portfolios when I brought work home. I'd leave sticky notes in his briefcase. Good luck with your presentation today, or I'm proud of you. It was strange getting to know him again. He wasn't the same man I married. Maybe he never was, and I just stopped paying attention. He talked more now, though. Not just about work or bills, but real things. He told me about a book he was reading, something about stoicism. He said it helped him feel more in control. I used to think being strong meant not needing anything. He said one night as we sat on the patio with Luna curled at our feet. Now I think maybe it's about admitting what you need and asking for it. That hit me harder than I expected. Because that's all I had wanted for so long, for either of us to be honest about our needs, our fears, our disappointments. But we were so busy trying to protect each other from discomfort that we buried everything, including ourselves. James had stirred that need awake in me, the desire to be known completely. But he wasn't the answer. He was a symptom, a sharp, clear reminder of everything I'd blocked away for years. I remember one particular day in therapy when our counselor asked us both if you could go back to the moment everything started. Unraveling, not the affair, but before that, what would you have done differently? I said I would have spoken up sooner. Told Mark when I felt myself slipping into sadness. Asked him to turn toward me before I turned away. Mark said he would have noticed the signs. Put down his laptop, looked at me. Really looked. I forgot who she was, he said quietly, and I didn't try to remember until it was too late. We were both crying by the end of that session, for what we'd lost, for what we'd allowed to decay. But also, for the first time in a long time, I felt hope that it didn't mean everything was fixed. Rebuilding trust is slow. Some days we backslid. Sometimes I could see the hurt flash across his face when I laughed too long at someone else's joke. Sometimes I still felt the pull of guilt so strong I couldn't breathe. I stopped seeing James completely. We never spoke again. I blocked his number, not because I hated him, but because I needed to choose something different. I needed to stop using escape as a way to avoid the hard work of staying. There was a time I wondered if I deserved happiness at all, but healing isn't about what you deserve. It's about what you choose to work for every single day. Months later, Mark and I took a trip, just the two of us. We drove up the coast, stayed in a small inn near a cliffside where the waves crashed so hard against the rocks you couldn't hear anything else. It was peaceful, wild, cleansing. One night on that trip, as we watched the sun dip into the sea, he took my hand and said, "I don't know if I can ever forget what happened, but I'm learning to understand it, and I think I'm ready to forgive you." I cried then, not out of relief, but out of recognition. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's choosing to carry the truth together and still stay. That was the first time we made love again. Slowly, tenderly, with more pain and more care than I'd ever felt in our bedroom before. Not out of passion, but out of something deeper. An intimacy built not on desire, but on earned, fragile trust. We're still figuring it out. Some days I still feel like a stranger to myself. Some days I see who I was in the mirror and wince. But most days I see a woman who broke and chose to rebuild. Not perfectly. Not heroically. But honestly, and that's more than I ever thought. I'd get it had been nearly a year since the affair. A year of unlearning, of rebuilding, of discovering the buried parts of ourselves we had stopped tending to. The days were no longer about survival. There was laughter again. Playfulness, even inside. Jokes, things we hadn't shared in what felt like lifetimes. The trust wasn't perfect, but it was alive. And that, we learned, was enough. One evening in early spring, I came home to the smell of garlic and rosemary. Mark was cooking. I hadn't told him I'd had a bad day, but somehow he just knew. That was something new to him, noticing the invisible things. We ate on the back patio, barefoot under string lights, wine in hand, Luna asleep at our feet. I watched the way he smiled at me across the table, soft and steady. It was different now. Not the smile of a man trying to impress, or the guarded expression of someone trying not to be hurt. It was the smile of a man who had chosen me, again with full knowledge of my flaws. After dinner, we cleaned up together. No rush, no tension. Just the quiet rhythm of people who had learned to move through a shared space with grace. When the last plate was put away, Mark reached out, slid his fingers under my chin, and tilted my face toward his. "I still think about that trip," he whispered, voice low and warm. "The way you looked at me on the cliff. I think I fell in love with you again that night." I smiled, heart thudding in my chest. "I think I let you see all of me that night. I don't want to forget who you are again," he said. "You won't," I whispered, "and I won't forget you either." He kissed me then slow, reverent, with the patience I hadn't known I needed. He wasn't claiming me or taking me back. He was receiving me, welcoming me, choosing me completely. He took my hand and led me to our bedroom. No words were needed now. The air was warm with trust, thick with something tender and electric. He undressed me slowly, like he was relearning. A painting he used to know by heart. Every curve, every scar, every line in my body he touched with awe. I traced the lines on his chest, the ones time and stress had carved, and kissed them like a promise. We moved together like two people who had been to hell and back, and had decided to love anyway. There was no performance. No fear, just skin on skin, breath on breath. He whispered my name like a prayer, and I answered with my body, with my heart, with every broken and rebuilt piece of me. And when it was over, we didn't roll away. We stayed wrapped in each other's. Arms, legs tangled, silence humming between us, not heavy, like before, but peaceful, complete. Outside, the world kept spinning. The wind brushed the curtains. The stars shone quietly. And inside that room, in the afterglow of forgiveness and desire, we held each other like something precious, like something finally understood. We didn't just fall back in love. We rose into it together.